Amara Zane's life in the modern world was, by all appearances, a portrait of success and fulfillment. She was beautiful, intelligent, and driven, a journalist celebrated for her sharp instincts and compelling storytelling in a bustling metropolitan city. Her days were filled with purpose, her nights with the comfort of a loving family and a circle of friends who adored her. Yet, despite the vibrancy of her life, there was a quiet void, an emptiness that lingered just beneath the surface. It was the kind of ache that words could not fully describe, a yearning so profound it whispered to her in the still moments of her day. Amara often found herself pausing, staring into the distance as if searching for something, or someone, she couldn't quite remember. Her wrist, marked by a strange and intricate infinity symbol she was born with, became a focal point of her musings. Her parents had always called it a unique birthmark, marveling at its delicate interwoven lines, but to Amara, it felt like something more. The mark seemed to pulse with meaning, a secret etched into her very being, yet perpetually just out of reach. No matter how much she excelled, how many accolades she received, or how many people surrounded her, Amara felt as though she were missing a vital piece of herself. She carried this ache into her relationships, hoping each new connection might fill the void. The men she met were kind, charming, and even devoted, but none could light the fire she yearned for. They were placeholders, their presence comforting but ultimately fleeting. Each breakup left her feeling more alone, more convinced that she wasn't searching for someone new, but for someone she had already lost. Her friends teased her for her high standards, playfully accusing her of being too much of a romantic. But Amara knew it wasn't about finding perfection. It was about a feeling, a connection that she couldn't describe, but knew with certainty she would recognize if she ever found it again. On quiet nights, when the city softened under the gentle hum of rain, Amara would sit by her apartment window, staring at her reflection in the glass. The infinity mark on her wrist would catch the light, its delicate design gleaming faintly. She would trace its contours with her finger, her heart heavy with questions she had carried her entire life. One such evening, with the rain whispering against the window pane, she whispered aloud, "Who are you?" The question lingered in the stillness, not directed at herself, but at the man of her dreams, the shadowy figure who visited her in fragments of thought and dreams. She didn't know his face or his name, yet she felt his presence as surely as if he were standing beside her. Deep in her soul, she knew he was real. He wasn't a figment of her imagination, but someone who existed somewhere in the vast expanse of the world. Amara closed her eyes, letting her heart guide her thoughts. She pictured him, a man she had never met, but somehow deeply knew. Her chest tightened, and a tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of longing and hope. Somewhere, he was waiting for her, just as she was waiting for him. The bond between them, though invisible, was unbreakable, a connection that defied time and distance. The infinity mark seemed to glow softly under the dim light, as if echoing her resolve. Amara didn't know how or when, but she was certain of one thing: their story was far from over. Her life was a delicate balancing act between fulfilling her family's expectations and navigating the quiet ache in her heart. As the only child of a successful Nigerian family, the pressure to settle down and marry weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her parents, proud of her accomplishments as a journalist, were nonetheless concerned about the one part of her life that seemed to defy their carefully crafted plans: her love life. Her mother, in particular, fretted over her future. "Amara," she would say during their Sunday calls, her tone soft but insistent, "you're not getting any younger. Look at your friends. They're building families. What are you waiting for?" Her father, though more reserved, echoed the sentiment with quiet looks of concern during family dinners. They weren't harsh, but their worry was palpable, like a constant drumbeat in the background of her life. Amara had watched many of her close friends walk down the aisle, their wedding joyous occasions filled with love and laughter. She had smiled and cheered for them, but deep down, each celebration left her feeling more alone. Her family, seeing this, began to wonder if something was wrong. "You're too picky," her mother would say. "No man will be perfect, Amara. You need to be realistic." In their determination to see her happy, or at least what they perceived as happiness, her parents began introducing her to potential spouses. Dinners were arranged and meetings set up, but Amara turned them all down. She tried to explain to them that she wasn't looking for someone who simply checked all the boxes on paper. "I'll get married," she said more than once, "but only when I find the man of my dreams." Their frustration grew, and so did the pressure. Among the many suitors her parents had in mind, one name kept resurfacing: Femi. Femi wasn't just anyone. He was her childhood friend, someone who had grown up alongside her. They had studied together, shared memories, and built a connection that her parents thought could blossom into something more. Femi was, by all accounts, perfect, successful, kind, and deeply in love with Amara. "Femi adores you," her father said during one of their conversations. "He's everything you could want in a husband. Do you really think you'll find someone better than him?" Even her closest friends began to nudge her toward Femi. "Give him a chance," they said. "You two already have such a strong bond. What more are you looking for?" Femi himself was patient but persistent. One evening, over dinner, he leaned forward, his voice steady but filled with hope. "Amara, I've loved you for so long. Will you marry me?" Faced with the combined weight of her family's pleas, her friends' encouragement, and Femi's heartfelt proposal, Amara said yes. Her parents were elated, her friends cheered, and Femi was over the moon. But Amara's heart remained quiet, unmoved by the joy surrounding her. She told herself she was doing the right thing, that perhaps love would grow in time. It was during the season when Amara and her girlfriends took their annual trip, a tradition they cherished as a way to unwind and reconnect. This year, it was Simi's turn to choose the destination, and she picked China. Amara, despite her extensive travels as a journalist, had never been to China. The idea of exploring a new country intrigued her, and the trip felt like the perfect way to celebrate her engagement. The girls were thrilled, chattering excitedly about the itinerary as they packed. Amara tried to match their enthusiasm, but deep down, she felt a strange unease. She couldn't place it, but something about this trip felt different. When they arrived, China was everything they had imagined: breathtaking landscapes, vibrant cities, and a rich tapestry of culture. The girls threw themselves into the experience, marveling at ancient temples, bustling markets, and serene gardens. But as the days passed, Amara felt a strange ache growing within her. The beauty of her surroundings only seemed to highlight the emptiness she carried. There were moments when she would catch herself gazing at the horizon or tracing the infinity mark on her wrist, feeling a pull she couldn't explain. The laughter of her friends and the lively atmosphere around her faded into the background as the longing in her heart became almost unbearable. She couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was missing. One evening, as they stood beneath the glow of lanterns in a quiet courtyard, the realization hit her with undeniable clarity. She couldn't marry Femi. The thought of returning to Nigeria and pretending to love someone with her whole heart felt like a betrayal, not just to Femi, but to herself. When Amara returned home, she wasted no time. She sat Femi down, her hands trembling as she spoke. "Femi," she said softly, "you're an incredible man, and you deserve someone who can love you the way you love me. But I can't be that person. I thought I could, but my heart, it's not mine to give." Femi's face fell. His eyes filled with pain, but he nodded. "I always knew your heart was searching for something," he said quietly. "I just hoped it could be me." Her parents were devastated. Her mother cried, and her father shook his head in disappointment. But for the first time in years, Amara felt a sense of peace. She couldn't explain the ache that had grown stronger in China, the sense of longing and emptiness that refused to fade. But she knew one thing with certainty: marrying Femi would have been a mistake. Though she couldn't put it into words, Amara felt as though her heart was calling out across time and space, searching for someone she couldn't quite remember but could never forget. The infinity mark on her wrist seemed to glow faintly as if affirming her decision. She had chosen to follow her heart, even if the path ahead remained unclear. For Wei Liang, now Leeway, the modern heir to a sprawling global business empire, life was a gilded cage. Surrounded by wealth, influence, and every luxury imaginable, he was a man who seemingly had it all. Yet, behind the carefully curated image of perfection lay an emptiness that gnawed at his soul. Unlike most, Leeway carried the weight of memories that stretched beyond this lifetime. He remembered everything. The laughter of a young woman who had once been his entire world. The fire in her eyes as she dreamed of a life unfettered by tradition. The gentle touch of her hand that had felt like home. And the searing pain of their separation in the imperial palace centuries ago. A pain that still burned in his chest as if it had happened yesterday. The infinity mark on his wrist was both a blessing and a curse, a constant reminder of the love they had shared and the promise he had made. He often traced its delicate lines with his fingers, wondering if she bore the same mark in this lifetime. Did she remember him? Did she long for him as he longed for her? Or worse, had time and the modern world erased their connection? Leeway's immense resources afforded him privileges few could dream of. His searches for her were relentless. He employed private investigators, historians, and scholars, following even the faintest whisper of her name. He scoured archives, historical texts, and cultural records, hoping to find something, anything, that might lead him to his black jewel. But the world was vast, and she was nowhere to be found. Each failed attempt felt like a dagger to his heart, but he refused to give up. The fact that he still remembered her so vividly, that he felt this ache and longing centuries later, was proof enough to him that she was real. Amara was out there, and she was his destiny. Han, his closest friend and confidant, had been shocked when Leeway first shared the story of his timeless love. At first, Han had dismissed it as a fanciful tale, a romantic notion spun from sleepless nights. But as the years passed and Han witnessed Leeway's unwavering devotion, his skepticism gave way to awe. "I thought something like this wasn't possible," Han admitted one evening, his voice tinged with disbelief. "But seeing you and hearing it from you, it makes me believe." Han became not just a confidant, but an active participant in the search. He was deeply moved by the idea of a love so profound it could transcend lifetimes. "What if she doesn't remember or believe you?" Han once asked, his tone hesitant. Leeway's answer was resolute. "Then I will spend my whole life helping her to. I must find her. I'll make her remember." To his family, Leeway was the perfect heir. Disciplined, intelligent, and relentless in business, he was the epitome of a modern leader. But his family was oblivious to the storm raging within him. They pressed him to marry, presenting eligible brides from prominent families. Each woman was more accomplished than the last, beautiful, poised, and well-matched to their family's prestige. But Leeway rejected them all. "You cannot live in the past forever," his father admonished during one particularly heated argument. "You have a duty to this family, to this empire. This obsession of yours is a waste of time." Leeway's voice was calm but unyielding. I am living for something greater, Father. There is someone I must find. A phantom? His father scoffed, his frustration boiling over. A fantasy? You waste your time chasing shadows, Leeway. She does not exist. But to Leeway, she was no shadow. She was his anchor, his guiding star. She was the reason he had endured the emptiness of this life and the weight of responsibilities he no longer cared for. She was real. She had to be. Late at night, in the quiet of his penthouse overlooking the glittering city skyline, Leeway would sit by the window with the jade pendant he had given her all those lifetimes ago. Its twin was lost to time, but this single piece of her remained, a fragile lifeline tethering him to hope. He held it tightly in his palm, his thoughts drifting to dreams where she called him by the name only she had ever used, Wei Liang. In those dreams, she smiled at him, her laughter lighting up the dark corners of his mind. But just as he reached for her, she would dissolve into mist, leaving him gasping for air and clutching the space where she had been. The dreams were both a gift and a torment, vivid reminders of a love that refused to fade. Leeway's handsome features and undeniable charm made him the subject of many women's affections, but he paid them no mind. His heart belonged to someone else, someone he had loved for centuries. Every time he turned down a marriage proposal or rejected a potential suitor, his family's frustration grew. Yet, their disapproval only strengthened his resolve. One day, Han, who had come to admire his friend's indomitable spirit, asked a question that had lingered in his mind for years. Why do you keep going, Leeway? What if she's not out there? What if this is all for nothing? Leeway's response was simple but filled with quiet intensity. Because I feel it, Han. The fact that I remember her, that I ache for her, shows me she's real. She's my destiny. Han nodded, his skepticism long gone. A love like this, he said softly, a connection that transcends worlds and lifetimes. It's the kind of thing that makes people believe in miracles. Leeway smiled faintly, his gaze distant as he stared at the city lights. She's not a miracle. She's my truth, and I will find her. With every failure, Leeway's resolve only grew stronger. The thought of her being out there, perhaps lost or alone, drove him to keep searching. He prayed silently, not just to find her, but to find her unmarried, untouched by the pain of unfulfilled love. For in his heart, he knew that Amara was not just his black jewel. She was his reason for existing, his flame in the darkness, his timeless connection to a love that defied every boundary of time and space. Thank you for watching. If you love this story, please subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories.